Hello, my name is Greg Edwards. I'm an interviewer for the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. I'm interviewing Jesse Edwards on November 24th, 2006 in Verona, Kentucky. Our camera operator today is Sheila Edwards. Also present today is Ruby Edwards. So we'll get started. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did before you joined the Army? What were you doing before you joined the Army?
Well, I was raised as a farmer, and before you join the Army, if you was eligible for the draft, nobody would hire you, and so you get a job, maybe driving a gravel truck or something like that, but any real job, people wouldn't hire you. They said, go ahead. You're supposed to have 1 year training. Said, go ahead and get your 1 year in, come back and talk to us. So that's one of the reasons I went on in the Army and volunteered. You couldn't do nothing. You couldn't get your life started or anything. So I worked as a farmer all my life, about all my life.
Where were you living? Where were you?
In Laurel County.
Now, when did you join the Army, and did you join? Were you drafted?
When we would, you'd be called up and say, okay, we've got a quota now. You can go back home. And that was about 3 or 4 months, I guess, or 6 months before Pearl Harbor.
Where were you inducted? Where did you join? Where were you processed?
I joined at London, Kentucky, in the city hall they had, and then moved to Fort Thomas. There's where I was examined and assigned.
What did you do at Fort Thomas? How long were you there?
I guess something like 2 weeks, I don't know.
Now, after Fort Thomas, where did you go from there?
Camp Wheeler, Georgia.
What did you go there for?
Basic training.
What did you do in basic training?
Well, anything that a soldier would do. Learn your rifle, learn tactics, night marches. You were in good shape physically when you got out of there.
What branch of the Army were you in? What did you do in the Army?
It was
What did you train for? Infantry?
Yeah.
Where were you at when Pearl Harbor was bombed on December 7th?
I was at Camp Wheeler.
Did anything change from before or after Pearl Harbor was bombed?
Well, we've been walking guard with a rifle, empty, no rounds in it, and so on the 8th we started walking with live ammunition, and we'd load a rifle up, or somebody load them, and we'd start. In other words, we had live ammunition in our rifles.
What kind of rifle did you have?
M1.
Was that new?
I not really knew it had been used before by some outfit, but there's very few. There's 2 companies in, I guess it's a 12th Battalion, 2 companies that were armed with M1 rifles, and the rest had 03s.
After basic, how long were you in basic training?
I believe it's about 17 weeks, I'm not sure. They cut it down to half after that. But I believe maybe 13 weeks, I don't remember now. But anyway, after I got through my basic training, they cut it down to 8 weeks.
Now, after you left basic training in Camp Wheeler, where did you go?
I went to Charleston, South Carolina.
What'd you do there?
We acted as a service company and were shipping men out to Pearl Harbor, carpenters and welders, and we'd take care of them as a service company, and we were waiting on a boat, actually.
What did, after Charleston, where did you go and what did you,
I went to Panama,
and how did you get to Panama?
troop ship. We rode a troop ship, or troop carriers on the railroad going from Charleston to New Orleans. And there we got on a boat, or got on a boat, I guess you'd call it, and went to Panama.
Now you did you go through basic training with a lot of the guys you joined with and from Laurel County?
Yeah, about all of them are a big part of them. Now some they turned down. I had a friend from Laurel County by the name of Bird. He didn't pass his physical over here at Fort Thomas. Then I got a letter from home in 42, I guess, sometime. Anyways, after the North African invasion, and he was killed. He didn't pass as we did, but he's back home or back in the Army and doing basic training and killed in 42.
Now did you join with your brother?
Yeah,
And what's his name?
William
And
or Bill, however you want to put
did
it.
you and William go through basic and all together?
Yes, we did, yeah.
Now once you got to Panama, what did you do? What were your duties?
Well, we were infantry, and they assigned us to the 158th Infantry Regiment. So it was a National Guard outfit made up of in Arizona and Mexico. And some of the old Army men rejected to it. Said, well, now, if we make rank in here, then you do away with the National Guard, then our rank is canceled. And so the colonel of the regiment said, okay, we've got some guns here, 40 millimeters, got to have men on them from England. So they pushed the coast artillery, the anti-aircraft part of a coast artillery.
What were you doing?
Just training on those guns. We had all kinds of training. Some of those old sergeants didn't know nothing but field artillery or anti-aircraft. So they wanted us to give them basic training in infantry. And you had to be pretty cautious. You was training your sergeant. And a lot of times it didn't work out too good.
What unit were you assigned to in Panama in the Coast Artillery?
The 73rd Regiment.
What were your day in and day out duties? What were you?
Well, we unlimbered our guns, took the cover off of them, and cleaned the ammunition and cleaned the guns, and running through drill. And we'd have to run our men through certain kind of drill on the guns and a little of everything else. But they kept me busy because I don't know, it's something about putting men up and not busy. First thing you know, they'll start shooting one another and this and that. So they kept us pretty well crowded or busy.
Anything you remember about Panama special, or anything that you did, or people you were with?
Well, I don't know. We had a lot of, you'd be surprised how many men you lose by doing nothing, not by enemy fire or anything. And we lost quite a few men falling in the canal or falling off a guard tower or something like that. So, but the duty was hard to pull. You're sitting there and you know the enemy's not there, and you had to act as if the enemy was right over the other hill. And so it was hard to hold troops there.
What were you on what side of Panama? What canals were you guarding in Panama?
Panama Canal. I was on the Pacific side.
Or the locks that you were guarding?
Miraflores. And then about 5 miles up was Pedro McGill. And so there's 2 locks on the Pacific side. And so I was near Miraflores locks.
Where was where were you based? What camp were you at?
Huh?
Was there a camp or a base there that you stayed in?
Yeah. Let's see, what's the name of that? They've got troops there now, near the Miraflores lock. I can't think of the name of that
Well, that's all right.
camp,
Uh,
part of the barracks.
what else did you do in Panama, was it?
Well, I drove a truck some, and you had to have about 4 sets of driver's license to drive an army truck in Panama, so I quit. You had to have canals on, your regular army or your regular civilian license, and then you had to have for the Republic of Panama, and then you had to have army license, 4 sets to drive a truck.
So how long were you in Panama, or when did you leave Panama?
2 years later, we got there the 1st of April in '42, and we left there 2 years later.
Then where'd you go?
Back to the States.
Where at?
I landed in Boston and wound up in they call it then Camp Stewart, Georgia. And I wound up in there, and Edwards Air Force Base out in California. I don't know, all over, didn't do nothing much. We finally got back to Texas, started giving drill. They called it advanced training, but it was nothing but infantry drill. I'd had it all with Camp Wheeler. And so we didn't, that's all we done. I guess you'd call constructive. Just work it out, and first one thing another. They was trying to keep us busy. We wound up in California, and then back to Texas, take that training.
Where'd you go from Texas?
To Europe.
Where were you go on a ship?
Yeah. We rode the Queen Elizabeth out of New York.
And where'd you land in Europe?
We landed in Glasgow, Scotland, and we crossed the canal in Camp Lucky Strike, they called it. I can't think of the name of the fort now, but we landed crossed on boats and landed on the coast of France.
Where'd you land in France?
Let's see,
Le Havre, or
Le Havre. Le Havre, France.
you was all that time with your brother, you all together?
Yeah. I wouldn't, it's a lot of company with your brother, but I would recommend it because you got two to worry about instead of one. So, but anyway, we're still together.
Now, from Le Havre, France, where did you go?
We rode 40 and 8s.
What's a 40 and 8?
That's 40 men or 8 horses. You could load in them box cars. And so we rode them from there to somewhere in Holland. Hurley's Holland, I believe. Anyway, we rode them to Holland.
Then where'd you go?
Went to, excuse me, went up, our outfit, or one I was assigned to, was right in the edge of Holland and Germany. And so we were assigned to the 150th Infantry. Part of us, I don't know where the other part went.
And where'd you end up in Europe? Did you go to Germany? You in Germany?
Yeah,
When did you arrive in Germany on the front line?
well, I don't remember now, but anyway, we crossed the Ruhr River the 23rd of February in 44. Now we
45?
no, it was 44. And then I later stayed on in 45, but but I remember crossing that Ruhr River for the 9th Army, and it was 23rd of February.
Now, you was in the 102nd Infantry Division?
Mm-hmm.
What battalion or what regiment were you in?
I was in the 407th Regiment and 3rd Battalion and 3rd Squad in our battalion of what I was assigned to.
Now, what was the Ruhr River crossing like?
Well, I don't know. They had smoke where the enemy couldn't see you, they thought. And then they had a lot of mines, had a lot of soldiers over there. But there's still some outfit had crossed ahead of me. But I think, my outfit, platoon, we must cross about 3 o'clock in the morning
How'd you cross?
in boats. We had these boats that you make bridges and this and that with, and the engineers had stretched the cable from our side to the German side, and the river was swift. It had run down, so we'd get about so many men in these boats, take off holding to that cable. It was swift. The water was still swift. They had bombed out that Ruhr River Dam. I don't know why they hadn't done it before, but we had to move out of the low ground, get up on the bluff, and they waited for it to run down to a certain extent, but it had to completely run out.
Now, tell me, you told me before about when you lost your rifle across the Ruhr River.
Well, excuse me. I very seldom, it's almost impossible to separate me from a rifle. And I would get away, a lot of times you've been with so many men, you hear this and hear that and hear their tales, know where they're from, and so it's good to just get over to one side by yourself. It's not practical, it's not something that you should do, because if you're out by yourself, a sniper pick you up quicker than he would if you had a group. And I had my rifle leaning up against a tree. It wasn't about that big. And I seen some shells coming in. You could hear them hit. And they would fire them in 5 and 7. And most of the time about 48 minutes, I guess, or maybe more than that. They would fire another one. Then they'd break that cycle and fire another barrage halfway through that cycle that they'd been firing. So I heard that coming in, and I knew it was going to hit about the edge of the river, and I was maybe 150 yards from the river. And they called it creeping fire. We used it too. You'd fire one round, and then the next would be a little more closer to you. The gunner would keep winding that range finder and setting another move in their gun. And they just creep up on you, and they was firing 5 and 7 rounds. And I remember knowing where that hit. Well, there were no holes close to me, so I don't know why I was doing it out there without them. But anyway, my rifle was sitting up against that tree, and I headed towards where they was firing, where the shells were landing, and I was running towards it, as close as home. So the man in front of me, I don't know who he was, he turned the corner, he went on around the corner and got hit. And so they of course they took him to the aid station, and I hit in a shell crater. It was little bushes, hedge bushes, and they'd been through them with wire. And I went through a hole. I knew that next round was going to be close. So I went through that fence and through a hole and landed in a bomb crater. And that fellow in front of me got hit. I don't know who he was or don't know anything about him, but anyway, when I got back to where I originally stopped, I realized just as soon as I had the firing was over that I didn't have a rifle. So I rushed back to get my rifle, and it wasn't there. And I don't know what happened to it. There was no men around. There was no other men around. And the only thing I could figure out is it didn't show no scars on that tree, but my rifle was gone. And I went back to that corner where that man was wounded, and medics had picked him up, and his rifle lay there. So I picked it up and carried it to the war Indians.
Any other remembrances of the Rural River crossing?
I don't know. We had a boy by the name of George. He always likes to pull guards with me because he's the best soldier you'd ever see. And if you walked around the building pulling guard with him, you had to tell George who you were. He'd halt you. So me and George in that Ruhr River, we was pretty close together, and a shell hit right in there in that helmet, right in the back part of your head, and it knocked that helmet. I don't know where in the heck it went to, but George got his liner, and he wore it till after the war was over. Actually, you could stick your fist through that liner. And how in the devil that got off of a man's head without killing him, I don't know.
Did he get wounded at all, or did it just?
Yeah, he got some shrapnel in his head, and they didn't have the technique we have today to find this fine piece of metal. So when George's head would get sore, he'd go back and they'd pick out some more metal out of his head. But there's one fellow laughing, and George cussed him all to pieces. What the hell are you laughing about? He said, how a man could get a hole in his head and not get killed. Mm-hmm. But he wore the liner till after the war was over. We had to change him out.
Now you said one time you had some hot shrapnel or something on your uniform. Where'd that happen?
It was on the Ruhr River. They had, they were sending in artillery, and it was hitting in those trees. There's trees all up on the flood wall, and that was the most effective fire they had. And so he'd blow up, the shell would, and I was laying there, I didn't know where it was a hit or not, but anyway, something got hot on my rear end, and I got back there, flipped it off his shrapnel, but it was hot, and I flipped him off. I guess he'd burnt some.
Well, what'd you do after the Ruhr River? Once you all crossed the river, where'd you?
We went to, we spearheaded for the 9th Army from across the Ruhr River, the 23rd, and went up to Crayfield Inn, or Crayfield you'd call it, about 50 miles up the river, and we spearheaded for the 9th Army, and the 84th was on one side, Infantry Division, and 29th on the other side, and so they were in reserve. You'd get up in the morning, you'd go as far as you could at night, and then you'd dig in when it got too dark. Then here would come these people in reserve, they'd take over your hole. Well, you had to move around to one flank or the other and dig another hole. So, if you get 2 or 3 hours sleep, you was very fortunate of a night.
How long did that last? 2 or 3 hours sleep, would you?
It lasted, I believe, 9 or 10 days. You couldn't shave, you couldn't do nothing. We looked like a bunch of wild men. We got up on the Rhine River. It'd take about 9 or 10 days beard. That's the most mine ever growed. But the most places the water was knocked out. If they had any water, well, most places it was knocked out. So you had to catch rainwater wherever you could to shave or whatever it was. So I didn't shave for 9 or 10 days. The rest of the outfit is the same thing.
So you went from the Ruhr River to the Rhine?
Uh-huh.
What'd you do when you got to the Rhine River?
We stopped there, went up to what's called Crayfield Inn, and the British were on below us, like Dusseldorf, and when we crossed on their bridge when we got lined out and went on different places in Germany.
Were you crossing the British sector? Were you attached to the British?
No, we just crossed on their bridge, but during the Bulge, they put us, the 9th Army, under Montgomery as a British general. And I guess we were still under there, I don't know, under him when we crossed on their bridge, I don't know.
Now you were in the Bulge, the Battle of the Bulge?
I guess you'd say that. They moved everything from around us, and where they'd had a division, they'd send one of our regiments to hold the line. So after I got out of the Army, after I got back home and so, they said, we got a battle star for the Bulge, but we were just holding the line.
Well, how many major battles were you in? How many battle stars did you have?
Had 2 at that time, and so give us that other, we were supposed to have 3 for that division.
What were the battles? Do you remember? The Bulge?
The Bulge, it was Central Europe when I first got over there, and then it was the Rhine River. But to talk about the Rhine operation, it took in a lot of territory, and we went through the not only the Bulge, but we went through the Rhine River and on down to the and on in towards Berlin and in there.
Well, let's take a break. Hit pause. Okay, is there anything else between the Ruhr and the Rhine?
It was all level country, little villages, houses, and their farms were on the outside, and to save land and so on, they jammed everybody's house right up together, and some of them was pretty good sized towns, and others it's just little villages. But we had to take all of these things and it's level. Go down valleys and up somewhere else. And I know one place, they went down in a valley, and I think it's our company. They threw up a white flag. They didn't wait for them to come over. They just said we'll pick them up on the way, the captain did. And there wasn't hardly nobody there to pick up. They opened up on that white flag, and our company man said that's the last prisoner they'd ever take. And I don't guess they ever did take one after that. You had a prisoner walk him down the road, you met an I company man, he'd want to shoot him. That because they fired on that white flag.
Did you ever take any prisoners?
Yeah. Yeah, we took all kinds of prisoners, get on up on the Ruhr River, or we had regiments up. So there was a lot of people surrendered.
Now you crossed the Rhine River at the British sector, then what did you do after you crossed the Rhine? Or how was that? Was that crossing the Rhine River?
Well, we crossed it, I think it's Dusseldorf, and you just spanned out for these white spots, or for they'd hold up house spots in houses in villages. So we'd ride tanks and we ride trucks. We flushed out these strongholds, strong places for a long time.
Then where'd you go? Where'd you end up after the Rhine River?
Well, we was all over Germany. You didn't know hardly where you was at, or I don't. You got company. We would just pick up people, prisoners and this and that, rode tanks and I don't know what all. We didn't do no attacking, let's put it that way. We just, we're the one to use us, they used us.
Well, where'd you end up at when the?
When the war's over,
Mm-hmm.
I was on the Elbe River. That was they sent us up there, one platoon, and there was a bridge shot down, railroad bridge, and people could walk across it. So them soldiers, they didn't want to give up to the Russians, so they was all trying to get over to give up to us. And at one time, we didn't have nobody in my platoon up there. You know what the heck going to take place, and one time we had a regiment, and as I forgot some more men, just a very few up there. They would get one man in front and one on each flank, and one bringing up the rear, and that's to guard the regiment. One boy said he got down there and turned them over to the MPs. The MPs said, "Have you searched them?" He said, "How in the hell can 5 men search a regiment?" So they had to stay there till all the men were searched.
So how long were you on the Elbe River?
I don't know.
There till the war ended?
Yeah. The war. We didn't, you didn't hardly know when the war ended. They'd put out propaganda 6 months, or they're going to surrender, or a year before that. So when it actually happened, I can't remember the date yet. But they'd put out this propaganda, Germans would, that the war was over tomorrow day or some other time.
Now you and William were together this whole time?
He was in anti-tank gun in a battalion, and I was in a rifle company in a battalion. So we were pretty close together all the time.
You told me one time about time you went, he was in some kind of shootout in the town with his unit.
Yeah. We found out later that we were looking for a tank company or tank outfit. I don't know how many people was in it. And it swung around in the rear, and they were shooting everything up back there. And so they put us in to looking for. And we didn't know it at that time. But one night about dark, they rushed us to a truck, and my platoon got out on wanted us to guard a canal or bridge. They figured he was going to shoot up. So we dug our men in right to the bridge, and instead of hitting us, they hit Battalion. And William was in, that's where he was at. And they shot that town all to pieces. And there's one lieutenant, and the rest were enlisted men, stayed out there fighting. Now, they it was dark. You just had to feel out there. It's so dark. And the drizzling rain. And the next morning, they relieved us and told the lieutenant, said, take your men back to the billets where you was at. And I asked him, I said, Lieutenant, I've got a brother in there. I'd like to go and see if he's made it all right. He said, okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. We will go with you to look for your brother, and we'll get breakfast while we're in there. And that suited me okay. So we didn't have to walk but, I don't know, a quarter of a mile or something like that. And we got in there. That's the worst tore up place I've ever seen in Germany. There was tanks as a city square, which was usual thing in a lot of those towns. And there was tanks scattered all over it. And men, mostly German. And I know one man I was walking in there, and his hand was caught somewhere in a tank turret, and his feet was touching the ground. Now, I don't know, he must have been stretched out 15 foot. Anyway, then there was, as you walked in there was body parts all over that town with pieces. Some of them are no longer than that. Just, you call it intros or whatever you want to call it. And, but we was hungry, we went on to eat breakfast. But that was the worst tore up place, and it wasn't nothing but just men, a lot of them two, a lot of them individuals. One sergeant took me down, he knew of me, Williams' outfit, said, come here, I want to show you something. I went around there behind the building, and there laid 4 Germans. And he said, you know, I had a loaded rifle, and I never thought about shooting them. I started frailing with my rifle and killed 4 of them.
Did he run into them or something?
Yeah, they just come around the corner, each one run into the other one. And he said I didn't fire a shot, but I beat 4 to death.
Was William okay?
Yeah. He set up I think he's on a machine gun. He set up, kicked the upstairs window out, and him and another fellow was on a 30 caliber machine gun. And so it's a pretty good place when you got a tank. Tank can't, if they're in close, they can't elevate their guns to get you upstairs. So that's one of the things, you couldn't see nothing. You couldn't see a busted thing there that night.
Where was it at? What was the town?
I don't know.
Was it between the Ruhr and the Rhine?
Yeah, I can't tell you what town it was, but it sure was tore up.
Now you ended up on the Elbe River. Did anything change after the war was over? What did you do after, when the war was finally over?
One of the things that we demonstrated, my platoon of a rifle platoon and a mortar platoon, weapons platoon, to people that were going to the Pacific. And we would have been in the Pacific if the war hadn't ended, or we'd been on our way in about a month or so.
So you would have, your division or army was headed for the Pacific?
Yeah. You know, but it's so many men gone already, so many ready. I think my regimental commander, division commander, he told us there was 20 one or two divisions already on their way for the invasion of Japan, and we're somewhere in there about the 21st, 25th for the invasion, to get ready for the invasion. So that was how many men what they had in the Pacific. And I know, according to him, we had so many, just so many divisions had already gone. So, and what we had in Europe, we were going to hit Japan with all of that. And MacArthur said the first wave would be annihilated. So I don't know, we didn't hit them, we didn't get to hit them, but anyway, we was going to throw the whole load at them.
Well, this knife, why don't you tell us a little bit about this knife and what that, where'd you get that and what's it all about?
Well, there's a friend of mine on the railroad, he made it out in a machine shop out at DeCourcy at the Roundhouse, and he sent me one and William one. And so when that's bevied out of them wheels, them car wheels where they turn, used to have boxes in there. They eventually put, later on, they put bearings. But this is made out of that, and that's, I believe he said it's a car spring he used to make a blade.
What's the scabbard made out of?
It's a German boot. I got it, William got his with no, the scabbard was with it. And I got mine that didn't have no scabbard. So there's a boot laying there, and I cut him up, got the arrow wire and laced it together. And I would put this on my regular belt, and it would hang down below my cottage belt. Now, I didn't take it off day or night.
Would you use it? You didn't have to use it, did you?
No, A lot of people had to show it to them. If you take a, I think I've seen one, World War I commando knife. They had little squares come out about so many inches on each one of these, and had a spear here in the handle would stick up about like that. That was a World War I commando knife. So that made on the same order.
These are some of your medals. What are they? What's this up here?
That's a combat infantry badge.
Who gets that, and how'd you get it?
You have to stay 20 days from battalion on up to the front line, and they don't go no farther back in the battalion to get that. But you have to stay 20 days.
You were a sergeant?
Yeah.
And what's this? These here?
That's overseas stripes. I think that last one, I don't think I had the 6 months in, I'm not sure. But anyway, if you had so much in another month, they'd give you a stripe for it.
And this was your division patch? 102nd Infantry?
Yeah.
And what's the 16th Armor?
The men that had the most points, like you had to have 70 or 80 points for this or that, or married or something like that, they would send you home first. So that 16th Armor, it was just a new outfit, and they transferred them into other outfits and filled it up with 16 Armor and brought us back to the state and abandoned 16th Armor in Fort Knox.
What's these medals? What's this one here?
Good conduct medal, I think.
What's that for?
Didn't catch you doing nothing for about a year.
What's this?
That's a Bronze Star. That's supposed to be for bravery. I don't know. I don't think there's any brave men over there. I don't know.
Now this is the European Theater
Yeah,
ribbon, and there's,
yeah,
that's for, and the stars for the 3 major battles you were in.
yeah. And you had for Panama, I had American Defense Medal, I
American
believe.
campaign and World War II victory, and then occupation, I guess,
Yeah.
after the war.
Mhm.
And I'll get
And
this,
that top one was the one you really earned.
the combat infantry's badge.
Yeah,
Now this is you and your brother, right?
yeah.
When was that picture taken?
It was in the summer when they invaded, or when it hit France.
Yeah.
It was in the summer of that, I know they had invaded France.
You were on leave.
Yeah.
At home?
They give me and William both leave, so we were at home. That was made right across from the courthouse in London, Kentucky.
That was after you left Panama, between there and going to Europe.
Yeah, uh-huh.
And this is your division history,
Yeah,
and
not when we're out.
that's a picture of you, right?
Yeah,
Where was that taken?
we were moving up the division, I think, or the army, I don't know exactly which. And they'd send out scouts and jeeps, and we'd tell the army to move up. It's going from here to Covington. Okay, we cleared that. There wasn't no army units in that. And so that was what we were doing. And I had the platoon at that time. And so we was going out ahead of I don't remember if it was the army moving or the division moving. But anyway, we go ahead of them, and you call it reconnoitering, or however you want to put it, of what was out there in front.
Now you're the second from the left, and what's that hanging off your shoulder there?
Looked like a grenade.
Mm-hmm.
That's a smoke grenade. And I was going to throw that thing away. I carried it for I don't know how long. And I said, well, when they get ready to discharge this thing, I'm going to throw it, see what it'll do. And they come around. I never did get to pull a pin on that thing.
What'd you do after the war?
I went to work on the railroad.
How long you work there?
About 34 years.
Where'd you live? Did you move from London after?
Yeah, down in northern Kentucky. And Ruby talked me into marrying her.
Was there anything else you want to tell us about your experiences in the war?
Well, I don't know. You take, when I hit the coast of France, I had $20 American money. I went through about 4 countries, France, Holland, and 1 or 2 more. And I finally wound up changing that into marks. And I changed it about 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
Went on through Belgium and then on Holland and then on into Germany.
Oh, is there anything else you want to tell us? You was in, you're 4 years in?
Well, there'd be a lot to tell, but I don't know whether it's right or not. But anyway, we got up there, I don't know where it's at. It's up somewhere around the Elbe River. And they put my platoon and a lieutenant on patrol duty. And we had I had the men back in a ton-and-a-half truck, and had a lieutenant and a staff sergeant out in front. Well, we made two rounds. You go in there, what they call a dark forest, and I don't think it got daylight till about 9 o'clock. Then you'd come out, swing across a completely lodge, or completely of trees or anything like that. It was grass about that high, and I don't know if they farmed it, if what they would do with it, because it's, heck, you get up there on top of them hills, you can see 500 or 600 acres back in there, not a tree on it. Anyway, we got in that, we made about, I think about 2 patrols or something. Anyway, 2 or 3, and we went in to get chow, and they had hot chow breakfast for us. And I remember seeing a company runner, and I knew he was up to something. So I wolfed down my breakfast. They said, get in the car and in the truck and make another patrol through there. Well, about 5 minutes we was going out. Anyway, we went through that woods again, and out in that open country we heard some tanks and artillery firing. Well, heck, they hadn't told us, we didn't know there was a man in that woods but us. And it was a, some officer had an airfield was going to be overrun. So he moved his men into this side of a mountain, dug a bin. Well, one old sergeant, he was cussing till he'd scald the air, listen to him. He got in there and made 2 of his tanks got knocked out. And I knew what he was doing. They would come up there, and the Germans would come out and throw it both hands. And these tankers get off their tank, hit not manned, and go out, take their knives or pistols, whatever they had, and get back in. And during this time, I know that's what they were doing. And they throw the grenade in the 2 rear tanks. So we seen a bunch of men before we left give us orders to go back. About 25 or 30 men. And of course we want to know what they're doing up there. And they were from the 9th Army headquarters. And I don't know whether they were enlisted men or whether they were officers. There's about 25 of them, somewhere around there. And they were going to watch that battle. Now, we resented that, didn't think much of it. But they're sitting here on this hill. It's just like looking in the drive-in theater. Across on this other side was scrubby bushes. And that sergeant told us, said, the 405th is going to take it. And that was one of our regiments. And when we went on in and got us some more chow and went to bed. And them men was up there with with glasses. It's just like sitting in a giant theater looking across that valley at all them people. And so we resented it. They were back there, hadn't heard a shot fired hardly all through the war. It's the 9th Army headquarters.
Well, if there's anything else, or we're about out of tape, I think, but,
Well, if you got a little more tape, okay.
well, we thank you for your interview.
Well, there was a 105 round, 105 round hit in the middle of that bunch of men and killed 11, and I don't know how many it wounded. But I've often thought everybody up there resented it. They had over here they had a man observer, frontline observer, directing our artillery. And then you had these tanks up there also. But I've often thought if it's a good Lord thought that if they want to see men die, I often thought, well, I'll give them a chance. And there was 11 of them killed. I don't know how many wounded. But if you had been around on the spot, you wouldn't hear about it because they kept that in a secret. That's all.
Okay, well, thank you.